Hi everybody, it's Leslie here from Heffy Doodle, and today I'm sharing with you a project that I have made for a collaboration with Chibitronics, which are these really cool stick-on LED lights. And I love Chibitronics, I've used them for years, and it makes it super fun and it's easy to create light-up cards for your crafty projects. I'm starting today with my LED lights. These are the color lights, some copper tape, and a little battery pack here, little cell batteries. And I've picked out some colors that I think I'm going to use on today's project. And I've got my purple cardstock here and peacock feathers and fossilized amber. I'm going to be using my interactive years stamps, which is perfect for interactive cards. The Ghoul Friends stamp set from Heffy Doodle, of course, and some whimsically wonky frames. And I've also got the stitch bubble background. So let's have a go and see what we can come up with today. First of all, I've got my piece of card. Now this is actually already cut to A2. So I'm going to lay it down on top of my die really carefully and use some washi tape to hold it nicely onto my Gemini plate, and then run this through my machine to get my lovely stitched background. This is just a really fun way to add some interest to my background, and it means that you don't have to do too much work. It makes it really pop. I've now used this middle die from my whimsically wonky frames, and I've die cut two of these in white. One is where I'm going to have my final stamped images, and the other piece will hold my circuit. But before we do that, we need to get stamping. I'm using alcohol marker friendly cardstock, of course, and my mini Misty, and I'm going to lay down some of these images from some of these stamps. I've also used the Bed Heads stamp set to pull out this little bedside cabinet and a lamp and a picture frame and some more books, and that will help me create my scene today. Let's ink this up, and then I can color them in. That's the fun bit. Now for my background, I'm going to create a floor using some peacock feathers ink. So the bottom section of this white panel, I'm going to ink blend a little bit of blue ink to the bottom here. This is going to ground my whole design, and I want to create almost like a bedroom feel to this card. The sentiment I'm going to be using is just here for the books, and that's inspired by my daughter Piper, who loves books completely. I thought it would be fun to add a little subtle nod of some wallpaper. So I'm using the pinstripe stencil here with my fossilized amber, and I'm going to use my blending brush once again to add some color to this top section of my card panel. Now this has quite fine plastic stripes on this stencil, so instead of using circular motions, I go with the stencil, and that just helps me make sure that the stencil doesn't move around too much. I'll come in on top with my brush again just to blend out the top section, which is a design that I quite like. Here I have my finished panel for my card. I can move over to coloring my images. Now ghosts are hard to color. I don't know about you guys, but I find them very hard to color because I wanted it to look translucent, but I also wanted it to pick up some of the colors around about the room that he's in, because that's really what the ghost would be like, right? So I've used some tones of yellow in here, and I've tried to touch over on the right hand side because that's where my light source is going to be. So I want to give the illusion that the light is shining, and you can see a little bit of the light shining on him. I'm also adding some pinky purples in here and a tiny little bit of blue, just to bring in some of that blue from the bottom as well. Now this little cutie is from the Ghoul Friends stamp set, and he's reading a book, so he is perfect for this card today. Once I have all my images nicely colored, I can move over to die cutting these guys using the Heffy Doodle mini die cutting machine. And I'm going to snip them into individual pieces so that it's easier to run through the machine, and I'll hold it in place with a little bit of Heffy Doodle memo tape, of course. There we go, perfect every time. So I have all my little die cut pieces ready to rumble now. They are going to go onto my card, looking good. But let's stamp my sentiment up here. Now I'm going to use some blue ink. I've chosen Fiesta Blue from Catherine Pooler. And I've chosen this because I wanted something blue to match the ground on this bedroom. And the Catherine Pooler inks are perfect. They stamp perfect every single time. So I like it when my sentiment is a one and done. So the Catherine Pooler inks are perfect for that. Beautiful. Okay, now here's where I'm going to build up my circuit for my card. And to do this, I like to temporarily hinge together my two panels. This is a little bit of a tip for you guys who are building panels, building circuits using Chibitronics, is to use two pieces of card which are the same size, and that will help you create a panel on one, create a circuit on one, and then have a colored finished panel on top. So I want my little cabinet here, my light to go just underneath my sentiment, and I'll have some piles of books around about. I'm temporarily laying down these elements just so that I can get an idea of where I want my battery to be and where I want my light to be. So my light is going to be underneath here. So let's put a little mark with my pen. And then my battery will be underneath the picture frame. So here I've just added with pen on that lower piece of cardstock where my battery and my light will be. Now I can create a circuit. Now I do need a little piece of copy paper folded in half, and this is going to house my battery. It's going to go right up there where it says battery at the top left, and I'll just need to now draw myself a couple of lines to help me visualize where my copper taper is going to go. Now your battery has got a positive and a negative side, and so does the light. So you need to create some lines all the way from one side of the battery to one side of the light, and then the other side of the light back to the other side of the battery. This helps create your circuit. So here I've drawn my lines, and we can trace where the light is, it goes up, and the other side to the battery. Now at this point I realized that actually I needed a little bit more room for where the battery was going to lie. So I just took that left hand line and extended it out slightly so it could go up the left hand side of where my battery holder is, and that's because it needs to go along the top of that flap of paper. So let's stick this down. Lovely jubbly. And my battery is going to go right in here. Before I do any of that though, we need to lay down the copper tape. We'll start on the inside of the battery holder and run it along the line. I'm using my fingernail to burnish down this copper tape as I go and try and squeeze out any of the wrinkles so that it has a nice, easy path for the electricity to flow down. This is going to create a U shape right the way up to where my light will be. And then I can just tear away the excess. Now I get to repeat on the other side where my light will be. You need to make sure that these two U shapes of copper tape do not touch one another. Otherwise that will cause a short circuit and we don't want that. When going around the corners, I find it useful to bend it back in itself so that you create this little mitered corner. You pull it in the opposite direction of where you want to go and create a 45-degree corner and then bring it up on top of itself. You'll see here what I mean. So I'm pulling it back to the left, using my nail to scrape that down and then flipping it over to the right. And you get a nice, neat corner. Now I'm taking my copper tape along the top of that battery holder flap and on the other side. This helps us get this little flap which will go right on top of where the battery will be. The battery positive side will go against the base of my card, which means the inner U shape is the positive current and the outer is the negative current, like so. Now let's take a look at our lights. These are the colored lights. There's also different options for white lights and tropical colored lights, and I thought I would use a yellow light for today's project. And it's a little triangle and it does say on it, even though it's tiny, there is a negative side and a positive side, and you just pop that right on the top where I want my light. And honestly, I think I did put my light too far up to the top. I should have put it a little bit further down. You'll see on the finished card that the light is a little bit off center where I wanted it to be, but that's okay. I'm going to now add some foam tape around about my card and also around the battery to hold it in place because I don't want it to fall down when the card is being handled. And the other thing that I like to do is to add some very thin foam pads on the battery holder flap on either side of the copper tape. This means that the copper tape doesn't accidentally touch the battery whenever it's in transit. You have to actually compress the foam and squeeze it down in order to touch the copper tape against the battery and turn it on. Now that I have finished my circuit and added some foam tape around the outside of my card, I can simply fold over the flap and attach the top of my card to the bottom. So here I'm pressing the button and it is lighting up, but on camera you can't really see it because the card is actually quite thick card that I used. So I went ahead and took a craft knife and cut out a little hole, and it doesn't matter because my lamp is going to go right on the top. Now, if I had thought about it, I probably should have punched a hole with a punch or a die beforehand. That would have made it a lot neater, but this way works too. Now I'm ready to assemble my little scene. So I'm taking some wet glue and adding these elements to the front of my card, the little stack of books here, and then I have a larger stack of books to go on the left hand side. Now for my button, I want to make sure that I have this little picture frame in exactly the spot that I want it to be pressed. So I'm using a piece of memo tape to hold that picture frame in place and then stamping one of the sentiments from the Interactively Yours stamp set. It says press here. Then I can stick it above where my battery holder is and stick my little ghosty right on top. Now all I need to do is stick my panel to my purple A2 piece of card and adhere this to a note card. But before I do, enamel dots, let's add a little bit of whimsy and shiny love to these. I might actually come in with some glossy accents or diamond glaze and put this on his glasses as well. and the picture frame. I think that would be really fun. So let's take a look. Here's the finished card. And if you press the button, it lights up. Ta-da! Isn't it so fun to create an interactive card with a light? And it is really easy. Don't be scared, give it a go. Check out Chibitronics. Until next time, happy crafting!